I'm Rabbi Micah Streifer. I'm the director of Laasok, and I'm really thrilled to welcome all of you to the second installment in our Social Justice in Our Texts series. We're living in a world today where we really need to be talking about social justice. We need to be talking about what it is to have a just society, to build a just society, what it is to uphold the basic rights of all human beings. That's exactly what this social justice series is, social justice in our texts series is all about. Today, we're going to be talking about prophetic voices then and now with Rabbi Barbara A.B. Symons. So first of all, a brief word about Laasok. For those of you joining us for the first time, Laasok is a liberal Beit Midrash, a house of study, where we come together to engage with our sacred texts and with each other through an inclusive, progressive Jewish lens. This is one of many, many drop-in programs that we have coming up. And that is in addition to our many ongoing study opportunities like our Talmud study, our Pirkei Avot study group, our Reclaiming Shabbat community of practice, and that's among others. So if you're looking to deepen your connection to Judaism, to deepen your knowledge of Jewish texts, and you'd like to talk through options, I would invite you to send me a message. I'm just going to drop my email into the chat. You can send me a message through the chat, or you can send me an email. I would love to talk through options with you. Next, I want to acknowledge and thank the partner organizations that are part of making this series happen. I'm putting them into the chat as well, and I'll just read them out. They are A Wider Bridge, AMMUD, the Jews of Color Torah Academy, the CCAR Press and the Central Conference of American Rabbis, Central Synagogue, Congregation B'nai Israel in Little Rock, Arkansas, Congregation Shaarey Zedek in East Lansing, Michigan, Congregation Shir Chadash of the Hudson Valley, Keshet, Kirva Institute, the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, the Union for Reform Judaism, Temple B'nai Or in Morristown, New Jersey, Temple Judea in Coral Gables, Florida, Temple Shalom in Scotch Plains, New Jersey, and Zedek Box. This is an incredible coalition of Jewish communities, congregations, social justice organizations, umbrella organizations. Many of you are active in or part of at least one of these organizations, and we are grateful and proud to be partnering with all of them and with all of you. Finally, I want to express thanks to those of you who donated to make this series possible. If you are interested in donating toward the social justice in our text series, just visit the site that I'm dropping into the chat right now. Now, a couple of quick technical notes, and then I'll turn things over to our speaker. First of all, we are going to ask you to stay muted largely during the session. We're on Zoom, and we all know what happens if we all talk at the same time. But we do intend for this to be interactive. So if you have comments or thoughts to share throughout the class, please drop your ideas into the chat or raise your hand electronically, which you can do in the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. And Rabbi Symons will call on you when we have time, or I'll monitor the chat and make sure that she sees as much of that as is possible. All comments in the chat do need to be pertinent to the topic at hand. Any comments that are not about what we're talking about, we're going to have to remove, and I appreciate your cooperation and understanding that these things can be challenging when managing a large group. Finally, if you are willing to read a text, we have a lot of text in this session. We're going to be looking at Haftarah and various kinds of prophetic texts. If you're willing to read a text, please just say so in the chat, and I'm going to keep a list of who said they'd be willing to read, and I'll call on you throughout the program. Now, let me introduce our speaker, and then we're going to say the blessing for study and jump in. Rabbi Barbara Symons graduated from the University of Michigan and was ordained by the Hebrew Union College in 1994. She currently serves as the rabbi of Temple Beth El of City Island and the Reform Temple of Putnam Valley. She's proud to be Rabbi Emerita of Temple David in Monroeville, Pennsylvania, following her 18-year tenure there. She loves to pray and learn with people of all ages, as well as to actively work to repair the world together. She is thrilled to have even a small part in raising up prophetic voices through the many diverse voices that are included in her book, which is called Prophetic Voices Renewing and Reimagining Haftarah. And just as an aside, well, an aside to the bio, but not an aside to the program, the CCAR Press has offered us a discount for anyone who's at this program of 20% off Rabbi Symons' book. So there's the link in the chat. If there's a discount code there, if you'd like to pick up, it's a wonderful compilation of traditional and non-traditional Haftarah texts and possibilities, as well as commentary around them. Rabbi Symons met her husband, Rabbi Ron Symons, during their first week in Jerusalem at Hebrew Union College, and is daily and deeply proud of and inspired by him and their 3 children, all of whom are not only committed Jews, but learned, creative Jewish professionals. Now let's join in the blessing for study, and then I'll turn things right over to Rabbi Barbara Symons. I'm going to share my screen so that we can share together in this blessing. If you'd like to unmute this moment so we can hear one another's voices, please do so now, and let's join together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher tidshanu b'mitzvotav tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Which means in Hebrew, blessed is the eternal source of the universe, whose mitzvot, whose commandments bring holiness to our lives, and who commands us to immerse ourselves, to engage Laasok in words of Torah. Now, everyone, please remute yourself, and Rabbi Symons, take it away.
Thank you. It is so nice to be together. Thank you to Micah. Thank you to Laasok. I think it's great that every time Jews study anywhere in the world, it's a commercial for Laasok. So that was well done. Well played. So I hope we can be as interactive as possible. There are 54 of us at the moment, so we're going to do our best. And we already lost not lost, so forgive me, but eight minutes that I was planning on. So we'll just talk that much faster as we tend to do. So I'm going to screen share. Sometimes it gets a little messy, so forgive me in advance for that potential problem. But we'll see if we can. There, that wasn't too messy. Okay, so I'm so pleased to be part of this series, and I want to just jump right into it. So here it is. If God hired you to write a help wanted ad for a prophet, what qualities would you be looking for? And as you're thinking about it, you can write in the chat, you can raise your emoji hand. I will just say the first thing has to be that God chooses you. You don't get to self-elect and say, oh, I'll be a prophet. But once God has, put in the pool, so to speak, what might be some of those? And please do. I'm going to try to look at the chat, though. Mike is going to help me more with that because it's hard to do all these things at the same time. Meanwhile, Jerry, what do you got?
I think it's really important for a prophet to be able to see the big picture and not get too narrowly focused, and to be able to relate very well to people.
Nice. Thanks, Amy.
To be an empath and care about human rights.
Great. Fabulous. And I don't know if you all are looking at the chat too, but I'll just go through quickly. Courage, thick-skinned, honesty. Prophets can be anyone. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Loud voice and spiritual, healing through a wound, loving kindness, strength of conviction. Of course, I should be reading these slower, except that we are limited in time. Been through a scrape or two. Fabulous, right? Keep putting them in, even as we go through some more. So based on the studying I did in terms of working toward this book called Prophetic Voices Renewing and Reimagining Haftarah that we'll reference a bit later, here are some of the main qualities, right? So a spokesperson for God, called by God. So as I said from the start, they had to be called by God, right? And you also presumably have to speak in a way that's godly, as it were, right? Well-spoken, able to get people's attention. So it's interesting of how do you get people's attention, right? And with our world where there are so many voices coming at us, it's extra hard to get people's attention. But back then, on the one hand, they didn't have the social, platforms that we have. And on the other hand, they had to really capture the people. So, for example, as we'll see, use of metaphor, repetition. I'll say that again, get it? Repetition. Overstatements, generalizations, like anything that's going to really capture what they are trying to get people's attention the best that they can. Sometimes it really works. And sometimes when this many thousands of years have gone by, it doesn't quite work as well. Good at outreach and communication. So that might be seen as a little bit different, but let's think about Jonah, right? So Jonah said 5 words, and in English, 40 days more, Nineveh shall be overthrown, translates to more than 5 words. Got it done, right? So he was the most effective prophet. He said that the entirety from king down to subject to animals immediately repented. They didn't even ask them to repent, and they figured out what this was about and repented, right? So we might use that as an example. If we continue on, this is funny, Beyonce or Taylor Swift, is walk to walk a role model, right? And so you can't like say one thing and do another and be an effective prophet, right? So if we think about our leaders who are saying that they're compassionate but not being compassionate, that just doesn't cut it, right? So too with prophets, certainly. Courage to say no to his, it could be her, but largely in terms of Haftarah, it's his's society. And so that takes courage. We know that. We know that now. We know that probably in today's, I know not all of us are from the United States, but in the United States and around the world, it probably takes more courage in a way to speak out, to say no to our society. And sees the future, yeah, a little bit of that, not a full amount of that. Seeing the future isn't like reading tea leaves and that kind of thing. Seeing the future is often where a prophet who's in the southern part of the entirety of the land of Israel, right, in Judea, sees what has happened in the northern part and says, hey, folks, if you don't get your act together, God's going to let this happen to you. So we're seeing it up there, and you have to get it together. That's going to be a way of seeing the future. So it's not so much that it's kind of like, again, not the predicting the future, but to change it, Micah. No wonder you're the one like in charge here. Okay. Flexibility to take sides as needed. What that means is in the presence of God, the prophet takes the part of the people, and in the presence of the people takes the part of God. So when the people are really suffering, then the prophet's going to appeal to God. When the people are really going, off in the wrong direction, you're going to take this side, so to speak, of God. So when we make our ad, we're going to say all are invited to apply, male, female, Jewish or not. And so that's really important in terms of who our traditional prophets are. So I want to get into that a little bit without belaboring it, because I want to get into text too. And so if we look at this from Jonathan Sacks, maybe we'll have a reader for this.
Sure.
Micah?
Can we ask Sabrina to read this?
Sure. Who are the prophets? Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Who is a leader of the Jewish people? Only one who loves the Jewish people. Reading the prophetic literature, it is easy to see the prophets as social critics. But the prophets loved their people. They spoke not out of condemnation, but from the depths of deep desire. They knew that Israel was capable of and had been summoned to great things. They never criticized in order to distance themselves, to set themselves above and apart. They spoke in love, God's love.
Yeah, so that was beautiful reading too. Thank you. So right, so that's really important, right? In terms of sometimes they have very harsh words to say, and I might repeat the following, and that is that in terms of when we see the prophets, we'll actually get to that in a minute, but the narrowness of what we see are chosen by the rabbis. So the rabbis have really edited what prophets we most hear, and that's going to be important to kind of keep in mind as we go forward, but I will repeat that in a second. So who are the prophets? I just did Jewish virtual learning library, and by the way, you'll see 47 and 48 have question marks because 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Rashi is saying that he doesn't know, like some that were listed here. Another commentary says the missing prophets are Oded and Hanani, Haroeh. All, different questions. Is Daniel a prophet? Is Daniel not a prophet? So this is just a quickie here. One of the things that we're going to note is going to be where the prophets come from. So let's do one more slide here before we get to that. But I thought, okay, so we have 7 female prophets, 48 male prophets, and with 2 being questionable of who they actually are. And let's just think about when we encounter the prophet. So you could do the chat, you could raise your hand, whatever it is. When do we actually encounter the prophets? Like, when do we hear the prophets' voices? The traditional Jewish prophets as found in the Hebrew Bible from that list. I'm not hearing anyone. I don't think I'm seeing anything in. Wait, did I miss the chat? Hold on.
Yeah, there's some things in the chat.
Oh, I apologize. I was on the wrong button. Okay. So on Monday and Thursday, which is interesting, that's when Torah is read. So if they're within the Torah, yes. If they're not within the Torah, meaning the 5 books, right, Genesis through Deuteronomy, then maybe not. Right? Be mitzvah. When we need that, which is interesting, right? We open it up, right? But in terms of when they come to us, as it were, right? Every Shabbat, right, is usually when we see them. So let's just look at this. While we could always open a book, we could hear from a sermon, we could hear from classes, quote within the Siddur, not so much within the prayer book, but a little bit. And then Haftarah, right? The Haftarah within the service, and we're going to talk about that in a second, that comes after the Torah portion, is in fact the number one answer. It's most likely that Jews who are encountering the prophets are encountering them there. However, in a way, that's not saying that much. So let's just think about this for a second. So if the way that prophets show up weekly is at Shabbat or festival services through the Haftarah, then first of all, you probably are more likely to take the affiliated people. People can study on their own, right? But more likely that group. And then you're going to make it a smaller group of those who actually show up on Shabbat morning. Then you're going to make it a smaller group in terms of those who do not go to the bathroom at that point in the service because they don't know what it means, or they don't know who the prophet is, or they're not getting an explanation about it, or whatever it is. It really is a narrow slice of Jewry that is seeing the prophets on a regular basis. And granted, it's a cycle. So you're always hearing the same voices year after year after year, right? And so, right, so the prophets of yore, Y-O-R-E, are out and about in the market. I'm just seeing a couple of chats here, right? And in our songs, in our actions, yes. But in terms of actually hearing them come to us, I don't know about you, but at my local Stop and Shop, aisle 4 doesn't have a prophet standing there, right, up on a milk crate, right, right. But I'm making light in a sense just because I think a lot of people maybe really this. I'm not just being nice. This group might be excluded because here you are studying, but we're not encountering them as much, right? And so let's just remind ourselves quickly of the definition. So Haftarah, right, conclusion or dismissal, because it comes at the conclusion of the Torah portion. It is from Nevi'im, the second section of the Hebrew Bible. It does not include all of the prophets there, nor does it include all of what they have said. So even if you take Isaiah, who is the rabbis chose as the majority voice of Haftarah throughout the year, all the chapters of Isaiah, this much is what we get, because you get somewhere between 10 and let's say 25 verses each week. It's so little of what Isaiah says, which might mean that we don't get to hear the rest of what they have to say unless we go to pick up, Isaiah and start reading it or something like that. So if we just take a quick look at the blessing, because I like to take a quick look at the blessing, and then we're going to soon get into some text. I just want to point out that this is really interesting to me that we largely don't look at the English, right? For all that, let's just say Bar Mitzvah kids, right? For all they study this, takes a long time. I know there's some cantors on here with us and rabbis who teach, right? How much do we look at the English of it? So praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen faithful prophets to speak words of truth. And by the way, faithful prophets is Nevi'im Tovim. Praise to you, Adonai, for the revelation of Torah, for your servant Moses, for your people Israel, and for the prophets of truth and righteousness. So if we just take maybe if a couple people want to speak, we could go to, so the rabbis created this blessing, and then the blessing after, which is largely the kitchen sink, parallel to Birkat Hamazon. Start with praise of prophet, Shabbat, whatever, and then throw in everything you can possibly think of. So with this one before, what's its goal? What are the rabbis trying to get across by sharing this blessing? You could write in the chat, or you could speak. And I'll just, while you're writing, I'll just apply for a job in what Micah wrote about the, prophets study. There you go. All right. Prophets are for us. Listen to what's coming next. Divinely authorized, right? It's going, all of you. Yes. Yay. Ding, ding, ding. All the way back to Mount Sinai, right? So look at what happens. Not only are they elevating, forgive that pun, but elevating the prophets to be coming from Mount Sinai, it's also putting the rabbis kind of in line there. It's really interesting, right? So it not only legitimates the reading of the Haftarah by declaring its contents true and loved by God and stemmed in Sinai, right? But the rabbis understood the prophets, I love this, as proto-rabbis who interpret the Torah. So how to lift yourself up, right? So these blessings tie together all of this, including the prophets who are, in a sense, Torah's first commentators or legitimate interpreters. And we're going to see, like I said already before, the influence of the rabbis' voices and the prophetic voice through the sections chosen. So there's some stuff we love, right? We love these ones. Right. So can we ever read some of our favorites, top 3?
Sure. How about Bob Hammer?
You have been told, O mortal, what is good and what God requires of you, only to do justice and to love goodness and to walk modestly with your God. Read on.
Please.
Is such the fast I desire? A day for people to starve their bodies? Do you call that a fast, a day when God is favorable? No. This is the fast I desire, to unlock fetters of wickedness and unite the cords of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. It is to share your bread with the hungry and to take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to ignore your own kin. That's from
Thank you. Well read, and yes, right, untie the cords. And I don't know about you, I put you all at the top of my screen, so I can't see the one at the top of the screen, but at the top of the screen, Amos, let justice well up like water, righteousness like an unfailing stream. By the way, if you haven't been to, and forgive me, it's such a long name, I forget what it is, but the African American Museum in the Smithsonian, they have a meditation room with this written, if I remember, I was there a few years ago, with like water coming down. It's just a breathtaking thing. Okay, we like these ones, right? Sometimes we are not as inclined, right? And by the way, this one we just said, the one from Isaiah 58 on Yom Kippur, when if we were physically able, we were fasting, right? So we got the point a little bit more because we were enacting it. But let's think about the barriers to connecting to the Haftarah, to hearing the prophetic call. So anyone want to, again, okay. Oh, all of them are closed. Oh my goodness. Okay, the Smithsonian Museums. Well, look forward to going if you haven't gone. What are the barriers? So part of it is, unless you're at the service, you have to make an effort to go to a class, to pick up the book, to whatever. Difficult language, right? And so so I'm going to talk at you because I want to get in the text, and that's when I really want to hear your voices also, though. I'll look at this, right? Obscure language. So first of all, if it's chanted and then we go on, even the person chanting might not know what it meant, right? If it is not introduced in some way, remember, this is like 10 to, I said like 25 is versions of the Haftarah, out of context, right? It's in the middle of something else is happening. You might not know, wait, who's Isaiah? When did he live? Wait, when did Jeremiah live? And who's this other one? I don't know if I've heard of that one before, whatever it is, makes it really hard. And even the metaphors could just be confusing. Like, wait, I just don't know what that said. And now it's gone by me and we're on to the next thing. And we just have to get through maybe a sermon, anew, Chadash, closing song, and finally Kiddush. So we just want to get forward, right? We're not going to ask any questions right now. Anyway, so here's an example. And I will warn you, if you want to read this, be warned. And imagine inviting your 12-year-old cousin to have a lovely honor of reading the Haftarah as you become Bar Mitzvah.
Did you want me to call in a reader?
Yes, please, though they shouldn't say yes, but go ahead.
Amy Soleil, would you like to read this one?
Definitely can. Rebuke your mother, rebuke her, for she's not my wife, and I'm not her husband. And let her put away her harlotry.
Harlotry. We don't want to use that word.
Thank you. Seems to go to show I'm not sexual any. Thank you for your help. From her face, and her adultery from between her breasts. Else I will strip her naked and leave her as on the day she was born, and I will make her like a wilderness, render her like desert land, and let her die of thirst. I will also disown her children, for they are now a harlot's brood.
Oh my, so this 12-year-old would be like blushing in shame. I like to think that if I were studying this with a student preparing to become Bar Mitzvah and someone heard these words out of my mouth, like they should call children's services, right? Like what words are you saying to my child, right? It's hard, right? This is the idea of God and the Jewish people being married, and the wife, Israel, becomes a harlot, though, meaning that bowing down to other gods. And God is going to, kind of abandon her and, let her just die of thirst, and also disown her children and whatever, right? And later, God will take them back. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But Reverend Dr. Renita Weems, who has this tiny little fascinating book, writes this. I'll just read it. Why should I, as a reader, leave the world where I presently live, where violence against wives is unjustifiable, to inhabit a world where violence against wives is taken for granted? The marriage metaphor is useless, therefore, for shedding light on the theological question of punishment and judgment. I don't know, for this past text, I'll just go back for a second, some of these words are going to make people like, oh, wait, what was that? And can't get past the metaphor. And the idea of a prophet is to get people's attention. So maybe you got their attention, but now we don't, about what, right? What are we supposed to be doing with this, right? So we are going to look at Parshat Noach, Torah portion Noah. Luckily, I don't have to describe it. The picture kind of says it all. I will note that the Haftarah is different for the Ashkenazi, kind of Eastern European community, and the Sephardim. Sephardim have, I think, a good idea there because they often make things simpler. They have 10 verses here, right, rather than 22. It's easier to catch on to and so forth. And sometimes they're completely different here. It's just shorter. So this is from, and we're going to do 2 slides here. This is from this week's Torah portion. So I always like to connect in through using the book because there were 179 contributors spanning all of the diversity of Judaism. I'm so proud. What people did with it was phenomenal. So every single time I've taught from it, I use that week's Haftarah at least as part of my teaching. So someone who will read 2 shortish slides.
Jerry, please.
God has called you back as a wife forlorn and forsaken. Can one cast off the wife of his youth? Said your God. For a little while I forsook you, but with vast love I will bring you back. In slight anger, for a moment, I hid my face from you, but with kindness everlasting, I will take you back in love, said God your Redeemer.
Keep going, please.
For this to me is like the waters of Noah, as I swore that the waters of Noah never more would
We
flood the
signed up
earth.
for 3:35 over here.
I will mute them. Sorry, go ahead.
The computer.
So I swear that I will not be angry with you or rebuke you. For the mountains may move and the hills may be shaken, but my loyalty shall never move from you, nor my covenant of friendship be shaken, said God who takes you back in love.
Right. So again, we have a little issue here, right? As a wife forlorn and forsaken, can one cast off the wife of his youth? But we're having a bit of a difficulty here. This is more seemingly about the land of Israel as opposed to the people of Israel. It might be a little bit different here, but the metaphor might be challenging. But we completely get the connection to the Torah portion. So always a Haftarah is either connected to the Torah portion or it's connected to the time of the year, right? So we just before Rosh Hashanah went through a long cycle, pre-3 Haftarot, pre-Tisha B'Av, 7 after. And yeah, as was Herbert, yay, just said, this is the same as Kitei Tzei, right? Right. So you think if the rabbis have this platform, you could at least use a different one every single week. So forgive me for being so critical, but it was just such an opportunity and said they did it twice. Granted, tying in different ways. If you pick up a Chumash, that explains why the Haftarah was chosen. It'll say why for Noah, and it'll be a different reason for Kitei Tzei, but you beat me to it on that. And by the way, Jerry has to get extra points for putting a rainbow in his background. I don't know if you always have it or not, but well played on that one. Okay, so we have this, and here is the question. We're going to have this question multiple times. Based on the description of a prophet and our ideal of living prophetic Judaism, what are we supposed to do now to repair the world, repair our relationship with God, or repair ourselves? Meaning, what are we supposed to do now that the text is directing us to do? So I only took a part of it, granted, so you can go back and study this on your own and think about it. But my approach to the book was to say, we need commentaries that help call us to action based on the Haftarah. So if we are called to action, in a shorter way of saying that whole long slide, what should we do? We should study Torah. Ira is saying, which, no offense, Ira, but we could say that all the time, but it's a good answer. We want to study Torah all the time. So repair the world. Yes, and yet what specifically is this, right? So it's a little bit hard, right? In terms of this is about God and Israel's relationship. What do we do, right? And so it's hard, right? Show compassion, do justice, and yet are we getting that from the Haftarah, right? So I want to push us, and this is what actually my classmate and Margot's classmate, she's on too, maybe others that I can't look at the moment, wrote this within the book. So could we have a reader, please? Based on the Haftarah for Noah.
Sure, let's go Margot Goldberg.
Perfect. The prophet reminds a storm-tossed nation of its everlasting covenant with God. He proclaims that comfort, peace, justice, faithfulness, and learning are possible. Like a storm, anger can and will subside. Peace and harmony will replace fear and violence. Isaiah offers a message of supreme optimism and hope. Oppressive conditions can change for the better. A rainbow will sparkle out of the water droplets. So, too, internal storms of despair and hopelessness are finite. The rainbow that shines after these emotional upheavals emanates from each precious soul.
Thank you. So it was, and Margot is the classmate I was talking about. So to have Sharon's voice here was lovely. So, when we hear this again, we're going to have this question, right? So this storm-tossed nation, that there can be after the storm a calm, right? So our question, and I won't read the whole thing again, right? But what do we do now to repair the world, to repair our relationship with God, or repair ourselves? And as you're thinking, I just want to say that I know that this through Laasok is about social justice, but the prophets weren't only about social justice. So actually I made a point, and it's actually Sharon Foreman's idea, so this is all coming together. On the front, it has the main words from the blessing. And we kind of broadly translated them in terms of spirituality, care and concern, and social justice. And so with that, I would break that down more if we had more time. But with that, right, the prophets are, sort of summoning us to do more. So for example, if we go back to her text, right, oh wait, let me go to the chat so I can actually see what you all said, right? Loyalty, which is hard, right? You can disagree and be friends. Speak up in the presence of wrongdoing, right? So with all of this, right, this idea that, you know what, we can have hope too, right? And that's really important, that there can be a future. Jan was going to say something. I hope I didn't take the words out of your mouth, but okay. So if you want to come back and raise your hand, please. So when we look at this, to me, this brings us forward into okay, I am understanding what Isaiah is saying in a modern way. The book just says we invited people to make a connection to the Torah portion of the holiday, and then 250 words, give or take. This is even just a subset of that. And look at this. Look at what Brandon Poland does with this. So it's a two-pager if you want to read the whole thing, or not, two-slider, I should say. But anyone want to read?
Sure, we had Danny. I don't know your last name, but if Danny's still willing to read. And if not, then let's go with Rabbi Emily Losman.
In the beginning of Parshat Noah, we are told that Noah is a righteous man in his generation and above reproach. Genesis 6:9. However, at the end of this Torah portion, Noah drinks wine, grows drunk, and exposes himself in his tent. The book of Isaiah is a powerful juxtaposition to Parshat Noah, as it speaks to everything that happens to those of us who are addicts and alcoholics after we drink, grow drunk, and expose ourselves. Isaiah 51:19 states it quite clearly. These two things have befallen you, devastation, destruction. Who will console you? Further on, they were despised, shunned by all, a people of suffering, familiar with disease. The lives that addicts and alcoholics lead aren't pretty, whether they are Jewish or not. Addiction is a disease that is progressive and deadly. However, there is hope. There are ways out of that despair. Today, there are treatment centers and 12-step meetings all over the world that are dedicated to helping anyone seeking recovery. Even though rack and ruin, drunkenness, and exposure happen to addicts and alcoholics, there is hope. There is recovery. There is reconciliation back to righteousness and back to God.
Again, this is a subsection of what was written, but we ask the question, right? So if now we're bringing in the end part of Noah, right? Not with the rainbow and the whole thing, but what happens when they get off the ark, and Noah ends up cursing one of his sons, right? I mean, all kinds of things happen, right? That this Brandon Poland weaves together the Noah story and a part that we don't usually actually talk about very much into the Isaiah text. And what was really important to me as the editor of the book was I very much wanted someone to speak about addiction related to Noah. And whenever anyone either submitted a commentary or a different text, which we'll talk about in a second, they were authentic to that community. So I really appreciate this voice. So, okay. So if we take this forward in terms of how Brandon Poland is bringing this forward, what could we be doing now? So whether you are actually speaking or you're writing in the chat, what is our call to action as living prophetic Judaism, right? Supporting those struggling with addiction. Thank you, Micah. Right, which is so important and so hard, right? Supporting, not crossing into enabling, right? You know, how does that all work? Right? Start the process some way, helping them as we can. If we are in that place of being, you know, having the disease of addiction, giving ourselves kind of a push and a break all at the same time, right? So we have, I think, a more direct way forward, and the language of Isaiah so worked with what Poland did with it. So I invite you to kind of think about that, right? That forgiveness, wow, right? That's really powerful, Beth, for what they, it keeps moving, for what they have done to our families, being honest with ourselves, different kinds of addiction, 100%, right? Absolutely. Look at what has been opened up for us. You are responding kind of fast and furious, more so, right? Because we have found a modern connection into this. So, pushing us. And what if? What if we extended beyond Nevi'im? So right now, all of the Haftarot, again, doesn't mean prophet. It means conclusion, that they're all from this the second section of the Hebrew Bible of prophets. Even though, as we saw in the list before, that some prophets are clearly in the Torah, right? Because Moses was the greatest prophet. Well, he's not going to be under Nevi'im, right? They're excluded. So when we think about, you know, how to go forward, right? We now have, and I love these. I have to right now. I think I have to make my note to save the chat. All right, I did it. 3 dots on the right you can hit, and it'll say save chat. So and what if, right? So as Hillel said 2,000 years ago, if they are not prophets, they are children of prophets, from the Babylonian Talmud. And to me, that opens up a door. It gives us an invitation. So for the next reader, we have a poem by Leah Goldberg. And so let's let Jan, I don't know if you're reading or if you want to make a comment. So unmute if you can.
Okay. A The masts on the roofs of the houses were just like the masts on Columbus' boat, and each raven that stood in their tip and on their tip heralded a new continent. And the backpacks of the travelers went by in the street, and the language of the strange land sliced through the hot day like the blade of a cold knife. How can the air on a small city bear so many? Childhood memories, loves that had fallen, rooms that were emptied somewhere. Like photographs blackening inside a camera, the pure winter nights turned into rainy summer nights beyond the sea and gray mornings of capital cities. The sound of each step drums behind your back and the marching song of a foreign army. And it seems, if you were just to turn your head back, and in the sea, the church of your city floats.
Thank you for reading. So on the one hand, we need much more time with these texts, even this, right? But we have an alternative. Again, I don't think Leah Goldberg is a prophet. I think she has a prophet-like way. And so she has been chosen here as an alternative Haftarah, not a prophet, but a prophet-like voice. And here is how it is. Here is how the person who brought it forward is suggesting that we understand it. And I think Danny was going to read. Is that right? Because I think we missed Danny. Danny, would you read, please?
What does it mean to be out at sea, to be floating on a flood, and not to know where you will find landfill? How does it feel to arrive at a new land? Leah Goldberg describes the experience of some arrivals to pre-state Tel Aviv. Their first glimpses of the shores of the new land are tinged with melancholy and not nostalgia for the places they left behind. She conflates the ancient flood, the biblical return to the promised land, Columbus's 15th century voyage, and her own pre-1948 immigration experience. Whether or not Goldberg set out to write a Midrashic exposition on Noah and the flood, the story of the 20th century wanderers that she illuminates in Tel Aviv, 1935, is full of Diluvian references, the masts, the boats, the raven, the new continent. With this 20th century piece of Hebrew poetry from Leah Goldberg, we may reconsider Parashat Noach from a more humanistic, empathetic standpoint. What memories of the pre-flood world did Noah and his family carry with them? How do journeys and migrations define our ancient, contemporary, and future narratives and lives as individuals and as a community?
Thank you. So while this is an excerpt, it's most of it, right? So it's not that much longer than this, but let's ask our, oh, I'm on the wrong button there. Let's ask our question again, please. What would we do, right? What would we do based on using this as a Haftarah? And again, it doesn't have to be on the bima. I like the idea of prophets and prophetic-like voices not being imprisoned on the bima, which shouldn't only be that small crowd there on Shabbat morning or festival morning, but bring it out, bring it to the streets, bring it to the board meeting, bring it to the interfaith dialogue, bring it, right, wherever you're going to bring it. So anyway, it just seems so contemporary. It happened to be this week's Haftarah, right? And Columbus Day, of course, just passed. Indigenous Peoples Day passed, right? And so forth. And by the way, there's an alternative for 42 American Jewish holidays also. So what would we do based on what this poem and what the interpretation is bringing forward? Right? So don't be afraid to go forward to the unknown. I'm going to go back to the text a little bit. And maybe we're going to think about, right, the question. So sometimes the call to action that every author writes here is either a direct go do this thing or a more subtle one, or questions, very often questions, which I love, right? Right? Remember your history, right? That's just great, right? So we can think about with all that migrants are in the news these days, right? For all that our ancestors might have come from one country to another country, for all that, again, from the United States vantage point, this country was built on the backs of migrants, those of choice and those who were enslaved to come here, right? We can think about, well, what is our responsibility toward those migrants, right? Yeah, so this is great. Work for a more welcoming society, and reflect on your past, how to move forward, right? So many different things that we could think about of, okay, what do we do with this? Because we really don't hear about what Noah was feeling in leaving. I mean, I know he had a lot of work with the ark thing and everything, but you know, his unnamed wife, his sons and their wives, right? We don't know what was it like to leave behind, even the people, if they were really that bad, even to leave them behind. What was that like, right? And so, you know, whatever group is leaving, even if it's out of dire circumstances, they're still leaving behind what they know, including their language, including their foods, including their right, whatever it might be, right? The strengths and contributions of refugees and immigrants. I mean, I love that, Beth, because one of the things I think about is that, you know, I think about people who have come to this country and maybe it's first generation, maybe second, but their household speaks their other language. They can speak two languages. I mean, think about how unusual that is in America compared to other countries, right? We should tout that. So so to me, this, as you see, this really energizes me, and I want to bring us forward to an alternative for Rosh Chodesh, again, trying to be timely. So on Wednesday is Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan. And here is a text that was brought forward by Cantor Abby Lyons, and it is by Adrienne Rich. You might know her poetry as well, or her writing as well. So we would need a reader to
I'll read this one.
Thanks.
Sometimes I feel I have seen too long from too many disconnected angles. White, Jewish, anti-Semite, racist, anti-racist, once married, lesbian, middle-class, feminist, expatriate Southerner, split at the root, that I will never bring them whole. I would have liked to bring together the meanings of anti-Semitism and racism as I've experienced them, and as I believe they intersect in the world beyond my life. But I'm not able to do this yet. I feel the history of denial within me like an injury, a scar, for assimilation has affected my perceptions. Those early lapses in meaning, those blanks are with me still. My ignorance can be dangerous to me and to others. Yet we can't wait for the undamaged to make our connections for us. We can't wait to speak until we are wholly clear and righteous. There is no purity, and in our lifetimes, no end to this process. Every aspect of my identity will have to be engaged. The poet who knows that the beautiful language can lie, that the oppressor's language sometimes sounds beautiful. The woman trying as part of her resistance to clean up her act.
Thank you. And so, right, there's a challenge like to us today of intersectionality, right? The Jews with the Jewish star on their rainbow flag, who are, you know, tossed out of the LGBTQ Pride March, right? And so forth, right? Yeah, it's a powerful text. So as Lynn writes, powerful, I have to say that the texts people brought forward were phenomenal. So whether they're used in a Haftarah spot or just as Jewish literacy, or, oh boy, I want to go back and I want to read more of Adrienne Rich's words, how fabulous. They are all Jewish texts, and the only exception is Torah. Nothing comes in the Torah. Everything else is open. One more comment, I just have to say it because I always say it, is that the most controversial is Karl Marx. He had some good ideas. He wasn't the most proud Jew. But at the same time, I often say that I think people would prefer Groucho Marx because they feel more comfortable Groucho than Karl, but that's what it is. So look at what, getting more serious, Abby Lyons does with this, right? What this poem. So a reader, or should I just take that? Okay. Each of us has a multifaceted identity within a much larger context. In Split at the Root, Adrienne Rich challenges us not to shy away from the contradictions and intersections of our identities and to respond to how they shape us and our lived experiences. Adrienne Rich shows us the importance of continuing to explore, appreciate, and critique not only the festival Rosh Chodesh, but the ways human beings both uplift and oppress one another across the generations. When do you find tradition oppressing? When do you find it uplifting? So that's a really interesting question that would cross a lot of different lines in terms of that could be some social justice stuff, right? About some of the traditions we have. That could be self-care, that could be spirituality, right? All of this kind of thing. And so as we conclude, again, what do we do with this, right? We can think about this, we can march, we can speak out on our multiple identities and wear that rainbow shirt with the Jewish flag on it, right? Jewish star on it or whatever. So I just want to say from the book, and this is, I'm so proud of the book, and I can say it so loudly because it's largely not mine. I contributed to it just like anyone else. No one put in more than about 5 individual Haftarot. There are many, many, many. 2 interpretations of traditional portion, 2 alternatives with interpretations call to action, for all of the Torah portions, all of the holidays, and then these 42 for American Jewish holidays, like Tu B'Shvat, that doesn't have one, that my daughter wrote for, that going off to camp, my other daughter wrote for Election Day, my husband wrote for July 4th, my son wrote for one, but it was a traditional one, for July 4th, for election, I said Election Day, for Pride Month, for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and the invitation is find your own, right? Find your own text. So I will just say, right, that they come from all of these places and more. Justices meaning Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Montoya, who is actually the Indigenous Peoples Shabbat alternative, which is just powerful. She talked about justice from both sides of her family, Indigenous as well as Jewish. Politicians, Harvey Milk was one of them, for example. Many song lyrics. There's a play script about a love story between I'm blanking, sorry, give me a second here, David and Jonathan. Many authors, Chaim Potok is one of the most powerful, I think, in here, poets and more. So there are just so many different ways that we can find other voices to be able to complement the Torah portion or the holiday, or frankly, just take them and read them on a Wednesday. But they can call us to action as well. So 3:59, there it is. Thank you to everyone who read, to write in the chat. If you want to write a last something, I saved the chat too. I hope you did too. Thank you, thank you, thank you to Micah and Laasok.
Thank you. Let me say a huge thank you to Rabbi Barbara Symons. This, at least for me, you've really helped me think about prophecy a different way. What does it mean to be a prophet? There's a famous quote by Heschel that I'm going to mangle, but it's something like, let there be the seed of the prophet in each of us, or, something of the prophetic in each of us. And so I like this idea that we can continue to lift up prophetic type voices, including in our study and worship settings. There are in the link in the chat, everyone, there's a link to Rabbi Symons's book if you're interested, as well as to how to get in touch with me about Laasok if you're interested in further study. Our next social justice in our text session is Monday, November 17th at this same time and same link. We'll be studying a Jewish view on bodily autonomy and reproductive rights with Rabbi Cookie Lee Olscheid. So I look forward to seeing all of you then. Once again, thank you to all of our partners. Thank you to Rabbi Barbara Symons, and thank you to all of you for being here. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.